Welcome to the Samuele Tini Show, where business, innovation, and sustainability converge to drive progress. Are you ready to uncover solutions shaping our future? Let's dive in.
Welcome to a new episode. Today, we are going to explore sustainability with somebody who has been at the forefront. With big companies, planted, say, the Lazy Environmentalist, and now is the co-founder and CEO of Super Cool. So I'm very thrilled to have here today Josh Dorfman. Josh, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Samuel, thank you so much for having me. It's a thrill to be able to talk to you today.
Fantastic. And Josh, when I received your profile and then we discussed, I say, oh my God, another wonderful change maker has come to the show. They keep coming. And I want to ask the first question for all our guests. Who is Josh? How you have ended up in this world of sustainability?
Yeah, for me, that's a question that goes back to the 1990s. When I was coming out of university, I was an international relations major. I'd studied in Europe, studied in France, I certainly loved being in France. But when I came back from my senior year, I got very interested in China. And this was 1993. The Tiananmen Square was about 4 years in the past, right? And the world, and certainly the US government, was starting to think about how are we going to engage with China? What's the 21st century look like? And something clicked for me. And I thought, my gosh, this is going to be the most important relationship for the US, right? What happens in 21st century China? I need to go. I just need to get there. And I need to go put myself in the middle of that. And so I went from being a ski bum in Colorado over to Nanjing, China. This was my 3-year plan. And I started teaching on a university in Nanjing, which was wonderful. I got a part-time job working in a bicycle lock factory for an American company called Kryptonite. Billion people riding bicycles in China in the 1990s, right? Seemed like it was like this amazing opportunity. I didn't know anything about business, but it was very exciting. I just wanted to learn as much about the culture, soak it up as I possibly could. Academic, business, just interaction. I ended up going to work for Kryptonite full time. We opened more factories. It was a wonderful experience. It was 1995, 1996. And you could see all around, all the bridges, highways, tunnels, infrastructure coming in at this incredible pace of economic development. And at one point, a couple of years into this experience, I thought, oh my gosh, here's a country with 1 billion people riding bicycles, but everybody actually wants a car. And I see all this infrastructure being built so fast. I don't know anything about global warming, but there's going to be 1 billion more car drivers here. What is that going to mean? And then you think about India developing and Eastern Europe developing and everybody catching up and raising their standards of living. And I thought, how do you do that on a finite planet? I didn't know what to do with that knowledge. It just sort of sat with me. But that's really kind of where I suppose you would say my environmental epiphany came from. I felt like I'd seen the future. And that sort of then forecast or foreshadowed the work that I've gone on to do.
And fantastic. And it's exactly, I recall many of what you say, what we see here every day. Being in an emerging market, a booming economy, we all see that's how we can develop sustainable models and how to support. Because if we all go to the path of the Western world or others, we will need 20 planets, not one. And from your impressive work, startups and what, one thing also struck fast to me, also your approach about how making sustainability accessible and your work at the Lazy Environmentalist. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I came back from China and I started researching and really digging in to understand what is climate change, what is global warming, that was all an awakening for me. And I, like many people, really, I don't know, like many people, I freaked out. I became extremely anxious. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is what we're facing. It doesn't feel like the response is from, you name it, the corporate world, governments, is nearly commensurate with the challenge. And I went into like hyper activist mode, protesting, marching, World Bank, World Economic Forum, like you name it, because I didn't know what to do. And as a result of all of that anxiety, what I ended up experiencing with my family and my friends was that mostly what I was experiencing was I was getting very anxious, very concerned, expressing my feelings about the environment. And mostly the response was, oh my God, we don't really want to hang out with that guy anymore. right? Like, here comes Josh to make us feel bad, right? He's just gonna guilt trip me or like lay something, like it's like enough already, right? And I just felt like, one, this wasn't how I wanted to be in the world. It didn't feel good. And two, my concern, my raising the issue in the ways I was raising it, wasn't actually impacting anyone to do anything different than they were doing otherwise. And that, once I really came to terms with that and accepted for myself, okay, my reality became, here I am, I'm living in America, I'm home from China, I'm in a consumer culture. This is really how we self-identify through what we consume, for better or worse. I'm going to change my view here. I am going to try to come up with solutions that fit people's lives. So let's think about consumerism. Can we shift consumerism in a more sustainable direction? Can I have a different conversation with people to meet them where they are, not force them to have my values, but me try to integrate solutions into the things that matter most to them? And that really kind of the underpinning of Lazy Environmentalist, right? The whole idea with Lazy Environmentalist, which me being also, and then there was also the owning the reality that I was actually a really crappy environmentalist in my personal life. And this came up in my first company. I had this modern design, eco-friendly furniture company. I was thinking about, we're going to use design. That's the secret weapon to get people onboarded into sustainable. It's going to have awesome, beautiful design. And, here comes the recycled table or whatever. And my first employee, on her last day working for me, because I was moving the company from Washington, D.C. to Brooklyn to get around these awesome designers, it was her last day. And she's like, look, Josh, you're not my boss anymore. I need to ask you something. I need to get this off my chest. And I was like, yeah, sure, anything. She's like, okay, look, you're the worst environmentalist I've ever met. You're always in the shower. You barely recycle. You were going to throw your bed out. I took it to the homeless shelter. Like, you don't act like an environmentalist. You don't talk like an environmentalist. You're selling all this eco stuff, but like, you're a giant hypocrite. And I just don't understand. And I just thought, like, 100% right, undeniably right. Two, I'd heard a speech from the CEO of Patagonia about a year earlier where he talked about being really authentic and owning kind of your warts and the things that are a little bit ugly about your supply chain or behaviors. If you're a values-focused company like Patagonia and they lead the fashion industry or the clothing industry. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to follow that advice. I'm going to own this. I wrote a little blog entry on my furniture company called The Lazy Environment. It's about me. I need this to be easy. I need a great low flow shower head with awesome water pressure. I will buy that, et cetera, et cetera. I care, I'm lazy. I'm a lazy environmentalist. And, that's really what kind of underpinned that philosophy and how I've tried to then communicate to others to get to make this, practical, digestible, easy to get on board, easy to say yes and shift behavior.
And Josh, I mean, when you fantastic describe, I really love. And it's exactly what in the movement we need. Simple action. Sometimes we talk very academic word or we are prophet of dooms, but it's like, please, let's help us doing something small because that is what also people need. And I think from there you have also worked now in the startup. You went to the business to try to become not only a lazy, but I think a very active environmentalist with your work. Can you tell us, your vision about, the trend in sustainability, especially in your work creating startups? I mean, you mentioned Planted, and then we will go to the super cool now. So how have you seen this trajectory of business becoming sustainable?
Sure. So, Lazy Environmentalist. So that eventually became radio show on Sirius XM, a reality TV show on Sunday. It became all these things, and we were building that as a business. But I felt for myself when that then ran its course. We did a couple of seasons of this reality TV show. It was a wonderful experience. That my passions really are in business, and so I went back into the startup world, and with this, belief that if you're going to build companies, the most sustainable companies or trying to affect change, the most important thing is to, again, kind of like we're talking about, meet your customer where your customer is. Develop a product or a service that with the mindset of, would my target customer want this even if they didn't care about the planet at all? Right? Like that's the bar, right? Like I can't have a customer buying a product because it's going to be sustainable. That's usually a very, very small business, right? But if I can sell something to a customer that they want, that meets all their needs, also happens to be sustainable, now you unlock something much greater. So Planted, you mentioned. Planted in 2021 is when we started working on Planted. A couple of years before that, I was doing my second modern design, sustainable furniture companies called Simply, like simple assembly. It was like kind of IKEA style, ship it to customers, knock down flat pack furniture. I would say way more beautiful. I would say more sustainable. We're trying to hit an attainable price point. And then the pandemic hit and I couldn't get quality material. We were using an FSC, Forest Stewardship Council certified wood or a plywood. I couldn't get it. And I really started thinking that there needs to be better, higher quality, better materials for the planet than cutting down trees, even from responsibly harvested, in my view. In that moment, I was introduced to a guy who became my co-founder, Wada Tan, who I was in North Carolina building this company. He moved to North Carolina. Someone put us together. I'm talking to Wada and complaining about materials. And he says, well, what would you use instead of trees? I'm like, I don't know, maybe hemp or something. And he's like, well, as it happens, I have 6 giant trash bags of industrial hemp in my garage. And so I was like, wait a second, okay, what, who are you? What, like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, I'm really into materials too. And I'm really into like thinking about materials that grow faster than trees to remove carbon from the atmosphere faster than trees. And so I said, well, who are you? Like, how'd you get to North Carolina? And he said, well, I just spent 8 years at SpaceX. I was in charge of the life support systems on the Dragon Crew spacecraft to keep astronauts alive in space. And I thought, wait a second. You moved to North Carolina from California and you're like, you just spent 8 years at SpaceX. So I was like, look, man, here's what we need to do. I'm going to close my company. I think you need to shut your little manufacturing company too. Let's go build a materials company. Let's go do it together. And can you get more SpaceX engineers to come to North Carolina? And he was like, yeah, I think we can do that. And so, that's what Planted became. The short of it is we said, let's go on a hunt to find something that grows faster than trees, has the same structural properties of lumber, maybe better, so that we can build a better product. Let's go build a factory without a smokestack so that we can turn that into materials that are useful to builders without giving all the carbon that we remove from the atmosphere back into the atmosphere up a smokestack, and so that we can sequester carbon in the walls, floors, roofs of new homes. And that's what Planted is today.
Fantastic. And thank you also for the wonderful story that is behind it. I mean, really a storyteller. And those are the moments where, you can create change, discussion and work. And it's such an important and now thriving company that we will need also maybe to discuss. And now you are not stopped there because, it's not enough one, a second, a third. Now you are with Super. So, and can you tell us more about your new company and where are you taking your next level in this journey?
Yeah, thank you, Samuel. So Super Cool came out of Planted in a couple of ways. Planted was really the first business, since we were focused on materials, we were focused on selling into home builders. Eventually we're going to sell into commercial builders. It shifted my focus from the consumer to more of a business to business point of view. And that business is thriving. We work with the largest home builder in America, D.R. Horton. We just got an order this past fall for 10 million panels. That's about 90,000 homes. That's roughly 15% of homes that are built in any given year. It's going to take us a while to fulfill it, but really amazing progress. And what I started thinking, so last year I stepped down as CEO. I was there for 3 years helping to build the company. And I started thinking, you know what? If I cast around and I look across industries, certainly in construction, but in transportation, and I look at policies, not just in the US, but around the world, I believe we're in a new moment. I believe we're in a moment where you have climate technologies that had a decade to get out of the lab, past the pilot, into commercialization, and now scale up. You have far more investment flowing into these types of companies. You have new business models figuring out how to cut carbon and build profitable ventures. And you have cities around the US and across the globe that have transformed into living laboratories for climate action, right? They all with climate plans. This is a new moment where the low carbon economy is underway, but it's underreported. We're going to go build a company, which is super cool, to go share that information, to go do the case studies on the business models, technologies, playbook, what's working, why, How do we, so that it can be de-risked for other decision makers and we can spread those solutions further into the economy faster and faster. That's the crux of what Supercool is. Like you, it's a podcast. We have a newsletter. We do events. We work with companies from a marketing branding perspective. But really, it's like, hey, this is a new moment. There's way more to understand about how this is actually working. The low carbon economy is here in many respects. How do we get more of it? We see a lot of cool stuff like where you are in over in Africa that's really amazing right now too, right? Leapfrogging the grid with some really amazing business model. Electric motorcycles being powered up on solar mini grids, right? Like amazing stuff by some really cool entrepreneurs.
And fantastic. And that's what I want also to comment with you. Come to the emerging markets. I mean, 90,000 homes, that is the shortage that we have here in Kenya every year of homes that we need to be built. And it's such an important part to share solutions, because especially with the indigenous knowledge, the work we are doing, even the circular, for example, the work I'm doing on circular economy for using coffee husks to power homes and others, those are the solutions that really decarbonize the economy, and they are often overlooked, if not even heard in the world. So and from all this, Josh, from all this, your, let's say, journey in this startup world and sustainability, let's say startup world, which are the lessons that you have learned on how to build a sustainable business?
You know, the things that have stood out to me, it's probably three. The first is absolutely team is most critical. Surrounding yourself with people who complement your skills. Planted is a prime example. Starting that business, co-founding it with engineers from SpaceX, for whom if you're going to go build a new supply chain for a commercial, agricultural product, we use this fast-growing grass, kind of like bamboo. It's not bamboo, but and you have to build a tissue culture lab, and you have to do things that are, for most people, be like, well, forget it. These guys are like, well, nothing's harder than building a rocket ship. So let's just go build a tissue culture lab. Let's just go build commercial greenhouses. Let's just go set up, right? Like, so having the team that can really complement your skill sets, obviously hugely important, especially if you're trying to do things at massive scale. One of the things that is tricky, but I was with Planted, that was really important for us. When we started that venture, we thought we were going to be farming hemp. And we spent a lot of time understanding what would it mean to set up an agricultural supply chain for hemp or work with farmers who are already doing it. And we just kept evaluating from a cost perspective. What would it really look like to scale this? We're trying to build a commodity. We're trying to sell into a commodity market. Price is essential. Eventually, we decided that hemp was great. It's just not a great fit for what we're doing. Had we pulled the trigger on hemp before we gathered enough information to see what other options might be available to us, had we committed actually too soon, it would have killed the company, right? We would have bankrupted the company. And so somehow you have to, when you're developing something new, you have to go as fast as you can to do as much research as you possibly can to ensure that you're making decisions that are really informed by data, right? Not just going on gut or instinct. I think that's just so essential and something that I think Planted really hit home for me. The third thing I would say comes back to it's kind of the through line we've been talking about throughout this conversation, is you really want to make sure that you have something customers want, regardless of whether they care about the planet or not, because that's where you get into the massive, massive markets. If you're, it depends what an entrepreneur wants to do. I'm always thinking about building businesses that can have the most, the greatest scale imaginable. And for that, right, that's finding what matters to customers. Can I build a better thing than what customers use today based on what they care about? So if it's moisture resistance, let's build something more moisture resistant. And let's make sure it's more environmentally responsible too, because that's what matters to me. But I'm not going to ask my customer to care about my values. I'm going to match theirs and surpass their expectations.
Thank you, Josh, for that. We have discussed this with many of our guests that are trying to, scale is important. It's not enough to have a nice, cute, small business, which is okay. But of course, scaling and really making an impact on a massive number of people. That is where you can make the difference. And talking on that and discussing from your also case study and work that you are doing at Supercool and your previous work, Can you tell us, I mean, what is the business case for sustainability? Which are the challenges and opportunities that you have faced? Maybe when speaking with the founders, with speaking with venture capitalists, say, I want to build a business, but I want to build a business that is also sustainable.
The business case is, and I think this can cause some confusion or trip some people up. The business case for sustainability is still a business case, right? Like this is a business. If it's a business, the business has to make money. And if you're having investors, the business has to make a lot of money, right? Like you just have to know what you're getting into. And so that's about solving pain, right? That's about solving a customer pain point. I find, I mean, just knowing, with you being over in Africa and in Kenya and some of the models we see over there, companies, and we've had them on a show like D-Light, right? That are doing, okay, so I see a thumbs up, so it's D-Light. So saying, how do we make solar really accessible in rural, remote parts of Africa? How do we solve for affordability? How do we solve for durability of these products? So there's going to be solar and lights and it really works. How do we solve for last mile delivery so we can actually get them and service them? And if we can do that, then we can help low-income families start, just raise up quality of life, raise up health, raise up education, right? We can do all these things if we can meet that make that product what that customer needs and wants and can afford. We can unlock all this incredible value. And so it can happen anywhere in the world. And so that's just one example we come back to a lot with D-Light, where I just think, my gosh, like anything is possible. If you're solving a customer need, you can do incredible good for the planet and incredible good for people and make a lot of money in the process.
And Josh, I mean, having worked with what they say, the last mile in energy, having distributed many of those kits, I've seen the transformational impact that D-Light and other companies they have done. If you solve a problem for a family, they don't have an horrible kerosene lamp, and then they have a small solar. Kids can study. There's no smoke in the house. They save. It's a transformational thing. And the fast D-Light, which is a small lamp like this that's cost a couple of dollars, but it's an incredible impact. So I really like what you say. The business case for sustainability is still the same. We need to be profitable. If you're not profitable, of course, you are not a business. And how do you see in the current panorama? Let me go there to the where sustainability, ESG, and all this has become under threat and fire. Some people are backfiring in it. How do you see the evolution of this movement and especially for business?
I think this movement, it's hit escape velocity. It's not going back. And the reason why is because the business case, like we're talking about, in so many instances is just so much better. And I'll give you an example. We had on the Super Cool podcast a couple of months ago a company called Zoom, Z-U-M, and their CEO, Ritu Narayan. And what Zoom does in the United States is they go to now over 4,000 schools.
The buses, no? The bus, yeah.
The buses. Okay, so right? And so they they basically go to schools and say, hey, look, your kids today on those school buses are having the same experience their grandparents had, right, 60 years ago. Nothing's changed. Nobody knows where the buses are, right? There's no technology on them. Parents have no idea. Administrators have no idea. It's a terrible system. Plus, you probably have twice as many buses than you actually need because you're not utilizing them well. Your routes don't make any sense, and you're not living in the 21st century with this system. And so Zoom comes in and says, we're gonna bring in a technology platform that gives everybody total transparency into where a bus is, gives a parent the opportunity to understand where their child is, and to also notify the school if that kid's not going to school that day so the bus can reroute. Right. And we're going to use AI to make the bus routes more efficient. And what they did for the city of Oakland, they also helped Oakland become the first major district in America to go to 100% electric buses. And in the process, because their system is so much more efficient than what Oakland's doing and every other school district, they said, hey, look, you have about 140 buses in your fleet today running on diesel. You only need like 72 to actually run your system, and we're going to make them all electric, and we're going to run the system for you, right? That's like the value of that is so exponential for the school, for the communities where there's no diesel buses now flowing through the schools, for the kids in terms of health, in terms of economics. That's just one example. I see many, but that's why I think there's escape velocity here, because anyone who has a Zoom experience for their child is not going back to an educational system where the buses are diesel and nobody knows where they are. This is just a better way to live. And I think so often what we see today is the low carbon solutions, the climate solutions, actually don't just solve climate change. It's not just so we don't die. It's actually enabling us to move to a future that we actually prefer.
And Josh, thank you so much. I really love the case of Zoom that I was discussing and trying to bring them on the show because I really love the way they frame the problem. And we see it here, even in Kenya, every single day, horrible buses. I mean, that you don't know where they are. My experience with the kids, I mean, have you arrived? Where is the bus? Thousands of messages on the WhatsApp. Nobody knows where. I mean, it's not there. Hey, F the bar. So those things I really put, and that is very good for the environment. And as we are going toward the closing, we will stay with you even 3 hours, but it's a wonderful conversation. I want to ask Josh, I mean, you are a serial entrepreneur, a serial sustainability entrepreneur. Which are the next step? Can you tell us? I mean, just some of what are your next and where are you pivoting?
Something that an entrepreneur we spoke to recently really resonated with me, something he said, and it reflects also this conversation around Zoom. It was this guy, Sam Ramadori. He's in Montreal. He built a company called Brainbox AI. And Brainbox AI is using an AI-powered system to take major HVAC systems, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and cut their carbon by 40%, cut the amount of energy by up to 25% by using AI to essentially give buildings intelligence, right? So they can say, look, we know the angle of the sun, we know what the weather's going to be, we know the pattern of who occupies the space, we know with 96% accuracy who's going to be in this space 6 hours from now. So rather than waiting 6 hours and spiking the AC or spiking the heat, right? And then you have all this cost. Let's just do it gradually. And that gives us time to see when there's more renewables on the grid. So let's actually do it when there's more, right? All this intelligence, right? And one of the things he said, so that's wonderful, right? And you're using AI and AI can be a great solution. But what he said to me and what Zoom is doing is he said the future of solving climate, building big businesses is the marriage of software and this intelligence layer with physical infrastructure that's just basically dumb, right? So school buses or buildings, and giving them intelligence to really drive down their carbon impact. And I think he's right? Because carbon, when you think, well, why do we have this climate challenge? Well, why do we burn all these fossil fuels? It's for physical stuff or our comfort or making stuff. And so how we bring intelligence to how we make stuff in the physical world, right? Or keep ourselves warm or cool or comfortable in an advanced civilization. That is the future, right? That is how we solve the challenge. That is how we live more wonderful lives. And so it is that marriage. I think find other industries where you can apply that type of thinking and you can make wonderful impact.
And Josh, I totally agree with you. We have so many damn technologies building buses and others that we really need to change, even waste collection, roads, and others. And as a last question, we have an audience all around the world. So we always ask our guests, which is the message you want to give to our listeners?
The message that I would relay is that this to me is a moment for hope. The challenges are massive, and we don't deny the challenges. But the response from humanity across the globe, I mean, we see solutions, you name it, from Beijing to Singapore to Sweden, you name it. We've talked about solutions in Africa. The response is, in my mind, so inspiring. And I suppose the last thing I would say as well is that the opportunity to create positive change is open to everyone. A lot of people will say, oh, leave it to the next generation, the young people, they'll solve it. But honestly, when I look around and I see who's building the biggest sustainable driven companies on the planet, they're not young people. They're people with experience who are in their 50s, their 60s, sometimes their 70s, who are saying, no, we're not hanging it up. We're going to go build a company that takes heat out of a sewer and recycles it and funnels it back into buildings for heating and cooling. That's a company called Shark Energy. And this guy, Lynn Mueller, who's in his 70s up in Vancouver. This is an opportunity that's open for everyone, and everyone is participating, and anyone who's listening can be part of that change.
Josh, I mean, how I can say, wonderful episode, fantastic insights. I'm sure I want already to book you next year to see where have you taken super cool and maybe where have you gone with your other venture. So it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much, Josh.
Thank you as well. A pleasure. Just absolute pleasure speaking to you today.
Are you satisfied after this wonderful episode? Let's continue together our sustainability journey.